What happens when meaning itself disappears? When the symbols that once guided humanity, faith, morality, purpose, dissolve into silence? We scroll endlessly, chasing validation through screens, pretending to know where we're going. But deep inside, something feels missing. It's that absence, that quiet void within the noise. That's where nihilism begins. Nietzsche once said, "God is dead." It wasn't a celebration, it was a warning. He wasn't speaking of religion alone. He was speaking of the collapse of the entire structure that gave life its meaning. And when that structure falls, we're left alone, with nothing but ourselves, our freedom, and the terrifying silence of existence. This is not just a story about God. It's a story about us, about what happens when humanity outgrows its old myths, but fails to replace them with something new. It's a story of despair, but also of rebirth. Because when meaning dies, creation begins. There was a time when humanity believed that every sunrise had a reason, that every suffering carried meaning. We built cathedrals, prayed to the heavens, and trusted that our lives were part of something eternal. But one day the silence grew louder, and the gods stopped answering. From that silence, a single voice emerged, whispering words that would shatter centuries of certainty. God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. When Nietzsche wrote these words in the 19th century, he wasn't declaring victory over religion, he was mourning. He saw that modernity, armed with science, reason, and progress, had dismantled the sacred architecture of belief. But in doing so, it had also torn away the foundations of purpose, morality, and meaning. For thousands of years, the idea of God was more than faith. It was the invisible order behind everything. When that idea died, the world didn't become free. It became weightless. To Nietzsche, the death of God wasn't about the literal demise of a deity. It was about the collapse of the moral universe humanity had built around one. Without an absolute truth, how do we decide what's right? Without eternal meaning, why do we endure suffering at all? He saw that once we lost faith in the divine, we would begin to lose faith in everything, in truth, in virtue, in ourselves. The modern world celebrated its triumph. Science replaced miracles, logic replaced dogma, and progress replaced prayer. But Nietzsche looked deeper and saw a generation drifting through life without anchor. He saw the early signs of what he called nihilism, the sickness of the soul that comes when everything loses its meaning. Without God, humanity stood at the center of the universe, powerful yet terrified. For in killing God, we had also killed the story that once gave life direction. And yet Nietzsche didn't stop at despair. He believed that this death, as painful as it was, could be the beginning of something greater. If meaning no longer comes from heaven, it must be created on earth. If no one else can tell us why we exist, then we must answer that question ourselves. This is where he introduced his vision of the Bermensch, the overman who transforms the void into creation, who builds new values from the ashes of old ones. But the path toward this rebirth isn't easy, because before we can create new meaning, we must first face the emptiness left behind, the terrifying abyss that stares back when the heavens go silent. Most people never make it that far. They hide from it, distract themselves with comfort, noise, and endless motion. Nietzsche's warning was not about religion, but about avoidance. He feared that in our attempt to fill the void, we would drown in illusions of progress, power, pleasure, all of which would only deepen our despair. More than a century later, his words echo with eerie precision. We have new gods now: technology, wealth, productivity, fame. We pray to algorithms, sacrifice our attention, and call it freedom. But beneath it all, the same silence lingers, a question we still haven't answered. Now that God is dead, who will take his place? When the gods fall silent, what remains is not peace, but echo. A hollow resonance within the human spirit, asking the oldest question of all. If nothing is absolute anymore, then why live? This is the question that haunts the modern soul. It's not because we lack comfort or success, but because comfort and success no longer satisfy the hunger for meaning. We are surrounded by abundance, yet we starve for purpose. Nietzsche called this state nihilism, not a philosophy of denial, but a condition of the human spirit when its foundations collapse. It is what happens when every story we believed in loses its weight. When heaven becomes a metaphor, Morality becomes a debate, and truth becomes a matter of preference. In this void, the modern mind wanders, scrolling endlessly, buying endlessly, working endlessly, searching for something that feels real. But the more we chase meaning, the more it slips through our fingers. The abyss Nietzsche warned of is not just a metaphysical concept, it's psychological. It lives in the quiet panic that hits at 2 a.m. when the room is dark and every distraction has faded. It hides behind the glow of screens, behind smiles carefully curated for approval. It's the silent question beneath our achievements. Why do I still feel empty? And it grows stronger each time we pretend not to hear it. In our quest to escape the abyss, we built a new religion, the religion of productivity. We replaced prayer with performance, ritual with routine, faith with hustle. We convinced ourselves that busyness equals meaning, that progress equals purpose. But the soul doesn't speak the language of numbers or deadlines. It longs for depth, not distraction. And when we refuse to listen, it begins to whisper louder through anxiety, exhaustion, and disconnection. The truth is, nihilism is not the enemy. It is the mirror showing us that meaning cannot be inherited. It must be created. It reveals the fragility of everything we once took for granted, forcing us to confront the raw reality of being alive. Yes, the abyss is terrifying, but it is also honest. It strips away illusions until only one thing remains: our freedom to choose. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who fights with monsters must take care that he himself does not become a monster." If we stare too long into the abyss, we risk being consumed by it. But if we dare to face it, not as victims, but as creators, we begin to transform it. The abyss then becomes a teacher, not a tormentor. And from that darkness, something new begins to emerge. A self no longer defined by belief, but by creation. And perhaps this is the true meaning of Nietzsche's warning. It's not that we are lost forever, but that we must now become the source of light ourselves. The death of God was never the end. It was an invitation. It's an invitation to rebuild meaning not from the heavens above, but from the depths within. Because in the end, the abyss doesn't destroy those who face it, it refines them. We were told that the future would save us. The progress, faster machines, smarter systems, endless data would finally free us from pain, ignorance, and limitation. But what if progress wasn't salvation, but sedation? What if every step forward in comfort took us one step further from meaning? We built a world of speed, but forgot to ask where we were going. Humanity once looked to heaven for purpose. Now we look to innovation. Technology became our new divinity, the algorithm our invisible priest. We no longer confess our sins, optimize them. Every moment is measured, every feeling tracked, every thought analyzed. But in this pursuit of control, we've lost the mystery that made us human. We've become engineers of efficiency, but strangers to our own souls. The irony is that we call this progress the endless expansion of possibility. But the more we advance, the more fragile we become. We are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than we've ever been. We have infinite knowledge, yet no wisdom. We have conquered time and distance, yet remain trapped inside ourselves. This is not evolution. This is exhaustion, dressed as achievement. Nietzsche foresaw this, the rise of what he called the last man, a being who no longer believes in greatness or transcendence, who seeks only comfort and safety. The last man avoids pain at all costs, and in doing so loses the capacity for depth. He says we have invented happiness, while his spirit quietly decays. Sound familiar? It's the modern dream, comfort without courage, pleasure without purpose, progress without meaning. Our worship of progress hides a deeper fear, the fear of standing still. Fear silence, because in silence we might confront the truth of our emptiness. We fear boredom, because boredom reminds us that our distractions are hollow. And so, we keep moving faster, louder, busier, as if momentum itself could replace meaning. But progress without direction is not progress. It's motion in a void. Perhaps the true challenge of the modern age is not technological but spiritual. To rediscover what progress was meant to serve, not profit, not perfection, but purpose. To remember that growth without grounding becomes chaos, and intelligence without wisdom becomes tyranny. We cannot fill the void with machines. Only the human heart can do that. Progress should not make us gods. It should make us aware of our humanity. Because maybe, progress is not about escaping the human condition, but embracing it. It's not about defeating chaos, but dancing with it. Not about finding new gods, but learning to live without needing them. And when we finally stop chasing the illusion of progress, we might discover something timeless, that meaning was never lost, only buried beneath the noise we mistook for evolution. After the death of God and the collapse of certainty, something remarkable happens. Silence. It's not the silence of despair, but of possibility. The same emptiness that once terrified us begins to open like an untouched canvas. For the first time, we realize that meaning was never something we were meant to find. It was something we were meant to build. And in that realization, nihilism transforms from darkness into dawn. Nietzsche called this moment self-overcoming. It is the point when the individual stops searching for meaning in systems, ideologies, or heavens, and begins to create it from within. This doesn't mean inventing false beliefs or illusions. It means shaping a personal truth through action, courage, and creation. When we can no longer rely on a divine blueprint, we are forced to become architects of our own existence. That is both terrifying and liberating, because in the ruins of certainty, freedom begins. Meaning, in its truest form, is not inherited, it's earned. It grows out of commitment, curiosity, and the willingness to suffer for something greater than comfort. A painter finds it in the brushstroke, a parent in sacrifice, a thinker in questioning. Even the smallest act of creation, writing, building, helping, learning, becomes rebellion against the void. Every time we choose depth over distraction, presence over escape, we carve a piece of meaning into the chaos. Existential philosophers like Sartre and Camus would later echo Nietzsche's insight, that the absence of inherent meaning does not doom us, it empowers us. We are condemned to be free, yes, but within that freedom lies infinite possibility, Camus wrote. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. In other words, we don't need the universe to have meaning, we only need the courage to give it one. But reconstruction isn't about returning to old beliefs. It's about creating new values that reflect honesty, creativity, and compassion in a disenchanted world. To live meaningfully is not to pretend we know why we exist. It's to live as if our existence matters anyway. To treat others, our planet, and ourselves as sacred, not because a god commands it, but because life itself is too fragile not to be cherished. That's the quiet revolution Nietzsche hoped for, not the destruction of belief, but its rebirth in human form. And yet, this journey demands patience. We will stumble, doubt, and lose our way. The old gods may be gone, but the desire for certainty still lingers in us. There will be nights when the void feels too vast to bear. But perhaps that's the test of being alive, to hold on to wonder, even when the universe offers no answers. So the question now is not what is the meaning of life, but what meaning will you give to yours? In a world without predetermined purpose, the simplest acts of love, creation, and kindness become sacred. And maybe that's what it means to truly live after the death of God, to stand beneath a silent sky, no longer waiting for a voice to speak from above, but daring to speak with your own. Freedom has always sounded like the ultimate victory of mankind. We all want to be free from social pressure, from religion, from systems, even from the meanings that confine us. But when meaning collapses, when all old values crumble, what remains is not liberating freedom, but a confusing emptiness. Nietzsche understood this paradox deeper than anyone. He knew that when humanity killed God, it didn't just destroy dogma, it erased the very center of its existence. And so came the darker question: what do we do with our freedom when nothing guides us anymore? In the modern world, we drown in freedom, can choose who we are, what we believe, the work we do, even the identities we display to the world. Yet in this ocean of choices, many of us feel trapped in existential anxiety. We are free, but we don't know for what. Like a sailor who lifts his anchor in open sea, we drift, but without direction. This is the tragedy of freedom without meaning, where autonomy turns into alienation and choice becomes a burden. Nietzsche never wanted us to mourn the death of God. He wanted us to face its consequences. We must become gods ourselves, he said, to create value, not merely inherited. That is the essence of true freedom, not the rejection of limits, but the creation of direction. Freedom without meaning leads to passive nihilism, life without compass, movement without purpose, but freedom used to create, that is active freedom, the kind that brings something new out of nothing. Perhaps that's what separates those who are merely free from those who are truly liberated. The first shouts, "I can do anything," while the second whispers, "What is worth doing?" In a world without God, that question is far harder. For now, no external authority defines what is good or right. All values must rise from within, from reflection, courage, and suffering. Freedom at its highest form is the ability to bear solitude and still create something meaningful. We often mistake freedom for the right to escape pain, responsibility, or limitation. But true freedom demands existential discipline. A truly free individual needs no external watchtower, because they have built their own moral compass. They are neither slaves to law, nor anarchists without direction. They are creators of value, those who stare into the void and with empty hands shape meaning out of ashes. Yet this journey is not easy. A world without meaning offers no map. Every direction feels the same, every choice absurd. But here lies the beauty of true freedom. It is not a gift, but a test. Freedom is the courage to keep walking, even when there is no path ahead. It demands the strength to be a creator in a world without a center, to carve direction out of emptiness itself. And perhaps in the end, freedom beyond meaning is not about finding answers, but about creating the space for the question to exist. When we stop searching for given meaning and start writing our own, that's when humanity becomes truly free. No longer beings who look to the heavens for guidance, but ones who stand on the earth, stare into the void, and declare, "I will give meaning to this life, even if the entire universe refuses to." When God died, humanity was not instantly free. It was first lost. The world lost its center, and man lost the mirror that once reflected the meaning of his existence. But beneath the chaos, Nietzsche saw something extraordinary, the birth of a new kind of human being. He called it the Bermensch, not a superhuman in strength, but a being who could rebuild values after every foundation had collapsed. In the emptiness of meaning, he did not drown, he built. In the face of nothingness, he did not despair, he created. The new human is not born from social revolution, but from an inner one. They emerge when an individual dares to face the ruins of old values and say, "I will begin again from nothing." The modern world is full of broken meanings, ideologies that have shattered, religions that have lost authority, and capitalism that promises happiness but leaves a spiritual void. Yet within those ruins lies a new kind of space, a space to create, to redefine, to be reborn. Nietzsche believed that the true human being is not an heir, but an inventor, one who does not live off inherited truths, but who dares to discover new ones within themselves. The birth of the new human begins with the courage to face suffering. For Nietzsche, suffering is not the enemy, it is the fuel of existential growth. "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he said. It's more than a motivational phrase. It is the core of his philosophy, because only through suffering is one forced to confront oneself. Without illusion, without masks, suffering strips away all false layers, leaving behind what is most real, the will to endure and to become more than before. The new human is not one who lives comfortably, but one who can dance on the edge of the abyss. They know life offers no certainty, yet they affirm it fully. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of fate. Not merely accepting one's destiny, but loving it. As if every pain were part of a grand symphony composing existence itself. In loving their fate, they cease to fight against life. They flow with it, yet remain sovereign in their own direction. In today's world, the new human is one who rises beyond passive nihilism, who does not surrender to the absurdity of life, but uses it as a canvas to create personal meaning. They are no longer seekers of a single truth, but authors of many. They know that reality may have no objective meaning, and precisely because of that, life becomes a space of absolute freedom. The world is no longer a prison of old values, but a wild garden where meaning can be planted by one's own hand. The birth of the new human is not about erasing the past, but transforming one's relationship with it. They do not reject history, nor do they bow to it. They learn from it, and then move beyond it. Within them, there is no longer a separation between spirituality and courage, between suffering and creation. Everything merges into a single awareness, the realization that life itself is an experiment, and we are its authors. Perhaps this is Nietzsche's most radical message. That man was never meant to find meaning, but to create it. We are not beings waiting for revelation from the heavens, but artists painting meaning upon the canvas of the void. The birth of the new human is not a distant event, but a call for today every time we dare to ask ourselves, if the world had no meaning, would I still choose to live fully? And when the answer is yes, that is the moment the new human is truly born. Humans have always searched for shelter from storms, from silence, from themselves. And after God is dead, Nietzsche saw that mankind was not truly free. They merely replaced one master with another. Once they bowed to God, now they bow to the crowd. To the majority's voice, to the safest opinion to follow. In a world that has lost its center of value, humans hide behind numbers, trends, and algorithms. They fear the silence of freedom, for in that silence, there is nothing to hold on to except themselves. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, a morality not born of courage, but of fear. In the herd's morality, truth is what most people agree upon, and falsehood is whatever makes others uncomfortable. The modern world reinforces this in new forms: cancel culture, social image, and the constant need for approval. We speak of freedom, yet quietly, we conform, afraid of being left outside the comfort of belonging. Social media has expanded the shadow of the herd further than Nietzsche could ever imagine. It built a world where freedom of expression slowly kills freedom of thought. Behind every post hides the fear of judgment. Behind every opinion, the desire to be liked. We no longer think to understand, we think to fit in. We no longer speak truth, we speak strategy. And in trying to belong to everything, we lose ourselves. Nietzsche warned, he who wants to be great must be able to be alone. But in the modern world, solitude has become terrifying, seen as failure, not reflection. Yet only in solitude can one hear their own voice, examine their own beliefs, and reject the false echoes of the crowd. The herd offers comfort, yes, but also chains. The tighter those chains, the weaker the individual will becomes. True freedom is not the ability to do anything you want. It is the courage to think for yourself even when the whole world stands against you. Nietzsche wrote, "You must become a lion to conquer the dragon named thou shalt." That dragon is every social norm accepted without question, every inherited rule we obey without thought. The new human must become the lion, destroying old dogmas and daring to say no to collective morality. But after destruction comes creation, and for that, he must become the child, innocent, curious, and free. The shadow of the herd is a subtle enemy in a world that seems free. It disguises itself as kindness, care, and solidarity, but often it's only shared fear. When everyone thinks alike, no one truly thinks. And in such a society, freedom becomes another form of prison. A prison built from the need for validation. Nietzsche invites us to rise beyond that, to build a morality born of personal courage, not public approval. Perhaps this is the hardest test for the modern soul, to live without needing to be accepted. Because true freedom is not when everyone agrees with you, but when you no longer need them to. The world will always try to pull you back into the herd, to make you safe, obedient, and ordinary. But if you wish to truly live, not just survive, you must dare to walk alone. Because only at the end of solitude will you finally hear the voice of your soul, clearly, and for the very first time. When the old gods fall silent and the noise of the crowd fades away, something extraordinary begins to stir. The quiet rhythm of creation. Nietzsche believed that the answer to nihilism was not found in more faith, nor in logic, but in art, not necessarily painting, music, or literature, but the art of living itself. When the world loses its inherent meaning, life becomes a blank canvas. And on that canvas, each of us must decide, will we fill it with color, or let it remain empty? Creativity for Nietzsche was not a hobby, it was an act of rebellion. A declaration that even in an absurd universe, the human spirit still has the power to create beauty. The true artist is not the one who escapes chaos, but the one who shapes it into form. To create means to stand face to face with nothingness and to say, I will make something of this. It is an act of defiance against despair, silent refusal to let meaninglessness win. The artist of life does not seek perfection. They seek authenticity. They are not afraid of contradictions, because they understand that truth is not a single point but a spectrum. They can hold pain and joy, chaos and order, love and loss, all within one breath and still call it life. In doing so, they turn existence into art, the courage to create. Even when nothing guarantees success, becomes a form of spirituality, one that asks for no heaven, but finds divinity in the act itself. In today's world, this message feels more urgent than ever. Our generation has been told to measure everything our worth, our time, even our happiness. We've been trained to perform, not to express, to produce, not to create. But creativity isn't about output, it's about becoming. It's the process of shaping the raw materials of experience, fear, failure, loneliness, into something that speaks truth. To create is to say, I am still here, and this is my story. Nietzsche's artist of life is not someone who escapes reality, but one who transforms it. They take suffering and transmute it into wisdom, take boredom and turn it into reflection, take emptiness and make it into space for growth. Life, for them, is not a problem to be solved, but a melody to be composed. Each moment, each choice, each failure becomes part of a larger symphony that only they can write. And perhaps this is the ultimate freedom, not to discover meaning, but to invent it. Not to follow a pre-written script, but to improvise courageously, imperfectly, beautifully. When you live as an artist, the world stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens through you. The line between creator and creation blurs, and you begin to understand what Nietzsche meant when he said, one must still have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star. So maybe the way out of nihilism is not escape, but creation. Not the search for one universal truth, but the courage to live your own truth fully. To wake up each day and paint one more stroke on the canvas of existence. To take this strange, fleeting life and make it art. Because in the end, meaning isn't something we find. It's something we make. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. Brushstroke by brushstroke. Imagine this. One night, a demon visits you in your solitude and whispers, you will live this life again, exactly as it is. Every pain, every joy, every mistake, every ordinary moment. Repeated, endlessly, forever. Would you collapse in despair? Or would you rise in awe, realizing that this very life, with all its chaos and imperfection, is worth living again and again? This thought experiment, known as eternal return, was Nietzsche's ultimate test of the human spirit. It is not about literal reincarnation, but about how deeply we affirm our existence. Could you say yes to every moment, not only the beautiful ones, but also the unbearable, the humiliating, the forgotten? For Nietzsche, that yes, that unconditional embrace of life, is the highest form of strength. It means you no longer live for escape, but for acceptance. You no longer seek to rewrite your past. You learn to love it. Eternal return is not a punishment. It is an invitation. It asks us to live as if every decision will echo through eternity. It strips away excuses, forcing us to confront what truly matters. If you must live this life again, would you still waste time on resentment? Would you still hide your voice to please the crowd? Or would you finally have the courage to live fully, unapologetically right now? For the modern soul, haunted by nihilism, this is both terrifying and liberating. We spend so much of our lives chasing a future that promises redemption, a version of ourselves that will finally make it. But eternal return pulls us back to the present, to this breath, this heartbeat, this fleeting second. It says, stop waiting. There is no someday. There is only this, and it is enough. To affirm eternal return is to love fate itself, amor fati. It is to stop seeing life as a problem to be fixed and start seeing it as a gift to be lived. Every failure becomes necessary. Every wound becomes meaningful. Every detour becomes part of the path. This love of fate doesn't come from naivety, but from courage. The courage to face life exactly as it is, and to whisper, I would live it all again. And perhaps that is Nietzsche's final message. Not despair, but triumph. God is dead was never meant as an ending, but a beginning. In the silence left behind, we were never meant to kneel, but to rise, to become the creators of meaning, the artists of our own lives. The dancers in a universe that no longer promises order, but still allows beauty. So ask yourself right now, if this moment were to return forever, would you live it differently? Or would you smile, knowing that even amid imperfection, pain, and uncertainty, this life, your life, is something you would choose again? Because when you can finally say yes to everything that has been, you have already transcended nihilism. You have learned to love existence itself. And in that love, the eternal return is not a curse, it is the ultimate freedom. In the end, Nietzsche's words were never a prophecy of doom, they were a challenge. A call for us to stop waiting for meaning to be given and start daring to create it ourselves. The death of God was not the end of the sacred, it was the beginning of a new kind of reverence for life, for consciousness, for the courage to exist without guarantees. If you've reached this point, maybe you felt it too, that silent tension between despair and freedom, between meaning lost and meaning made. And if something in this journey has made you pause, reflect, or breathe a little deeper, then let that be your starting point. Keep questioning, keep creating, keep walking even when the road fades into mist. Because philosophy isn't a destination. It's the act of moving forward with eyes wide open. If you want to keep exploring questions like this, not for answers, but for understanding, stay close. There are more stories waiting in the shadows of thought. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a piece of yourself there too.